Hey, JC, thanks for joining us today. As a way of getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
Thank you, Brian. Very excited to be here. Happy for the invitation. My name is JC Powell. I'm a vice president of sales for Boone Edom, who is a manufacturer of secured entrances, where we provide our clients with the value of knowing who's in their buildings and keeping employees safe.
Yeah. Is it a fun sale? It must be. You've been there a while, huh?
I have, yes, going on, let's see, a little over 13 years now. And, it's every day when you enjoy what you do, it's not work,
Yeah.
right?
What do you like
And
about it? What's exciting about it?
well, to me, it's about the customer, and every customer, even though they have similar um, wants and needs, their stories are all different. So you get to understand the inner workings of a company and how companies and how people buy. And to me, that's the journey. That's the fun part of sales, is really understanding how they buy so that you understand how to sell.
Smart. Where'd
Yes.
you where'd you come up with that curiosity? Because most people are like, how do I sell so they buy?
Well, it's funny. Like most salespeople, early on, I thought it was just God-given talent, right? I thought it was all me. Had a sales trainer about 8, 9, 10 years ago that asked me a singular question and said, "Why do people buy from you? Why are you successful?" And, we all have to look inside to figure out, why do people buy? People buy from people. People buy from people that they trust, and they buy when they're willing and able to buy. If you haven't given them the right incentive, the right value proposition to spend their money with you, then they're not going to buy from you. Um, so for me, it was really going back. You always hear, oh, salespeople should listen more than they talk. Yes, that's true. But I always ask, what are you listening to? If you're not asking the provocative questions to get beneath what every other salesperson, your competition, is doing, then you're just one of many.
Yeah. And let's dig into that. What are some of your go-to questions?
Oh, it's great. So because we're in a security field, right? So we're physically keeping unauthorized people out of buildings, out of institutions. So we deal with a lot of security personnel, chief security officers, things like that. One of the most provocative questions I think you could ask, and you have to be careful how you ask it, is, if something happens, do you lose your job?
Yeah.
It's about being emotional, right? And when you can it's not selling on fear, but it's selling on the reality of emotions, and it's getting to the right personnel that can answer those questions. If the guy you're talking to says, no, it's not me, it's somebody else, then you're not talking to the right person.
Do you ask it that directly or do you
No,
soft
no.
do you,
Yeah, you got to soft
yeah.
pedal that one a little bit. So one of my favorite questions to ask in our line of work is, so if you're the security officer, Brian, I would say, how many unauthorized people do you think is acceptable in your building? And if you tell me anything other than zero, I know you're lying to me.
Yeah. Eh,
So you start walking them down their path to my goal. My
yeah.
goal is to drive revenue and to secure their facilities, but they have a path, a journey that they have to go down.
And how do you keep out of the commodity trap?
Ah, there it is,
Because
right?
certainly you sell a physical product, right? Is that
Yes,
true?
sir. Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
And probably other people sell similar but different.
Similar but different. That's exactly right. And certain products can carry a commoditized label to it. I think a product becomes commoditized when you as a professional salesperson don't do enough to create the value and what the experience that company, that organization, is going to get from utilizing your equipment. If you come in as a salesperson and the phrase show up and throw up, and you start talking features and benefits, everybody has features and benefits. That's what commoditizes a product. But when you come in and ask provocative questions about what is your ultimate goal, how do you go about protecting your people and making sure that they get to go home safe at night, um, you really listen and understand how this organization buys, how they want to leave a legacy behind for their people. Look, I mean, the job force now, people want to go to places that are safe. They want to feel safe when they're at work. That's just as important as free coffee, as nap pods, as whatever it is. It's the feeling of being
Yeah.
safe and secure at work.
And how long did it take you to become good at this? Because I'm sure if year one, JC shows up, reads the brochure, memorizes it, and runs as fast as he can towards a chief security officer.
Yes. So it's funny. It has been a journey, and I keep using that term, but that's what it is. When I first started, it was about volume. How many people can I see? It was a numbers game.
Yeah.
And the older I've gotten in my sales profession, I have learned that if you slow down, it's the old story of the tortoise and the hare, right? If you're going so fast that you're not asking the right questions, or you're not looking at the right prospects, if you're not looking internally at your pipeline, then you're going to miss the shots that you should be taking.
Yeah.
So I have learned, as you slow down, I would say that it took probably about 3 years
Yeah.
to, and it was probably about a year after the sales trainer. And I was skeptical, I was like, oh, sales trainer, but certain sales professionals can walk you through the methodology of it, as opposed to just say, here's what I think you should do. Lead by example. And that's where I really draw my inspiration with managing and coaching and developing my team, is lead by example. Not afraid to go get on a site. Matter of fact, I'd much rather do that than sit behind a screen and stare at numbers all day. Anyway,
Yeah.
love the people.
And I got to imagine you go in, they want to commoditize you, at least at the beginning. It's a thing. How much does it cost?
Yep.
How do we implement? What are the differences?
Yeah.
How do you get them off of that?
So again, it starts with a line of questioning. Everything costs something, and cost is always important, but it's got to be important at the right time. If somebody's asking about price, the very first question of the meeting, or the getting together and building relationship, then they're probably not in the right mindset of where they should be as a buyer.
Yeah.
We're all buyers, but when you got a seller that can work with a buyer and can ask the questions to create that emotional tie, it's all about creating tension in a sales call, right? You raise the tension and then you let it fall, and then you raise the tension and you let it fall. And it's an artwork, and so there's certainly no one way to do it. I believe in creativity, and everybody is their own person, and that's the way that they should sell. But when people start asking about price, I usually counter that back with another question and say, well, how much do you think it cost? And that gives me an idea of where they're at in their head and what their budget might look like. And if they say, oh, well, I think that this security entrance is, $10,000. Well, in fact, it's $100,000, then we're way off.
Yeah.
So we have to then peel that back a little bit and say, well, how did you get to that $10,000 number? And then you got to start building the proposition value, the value proposition off of that.
And where are you typically in the market? Are you at the high end, the medium?
We're at the high end.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So you really got to build that value up.
That's exactly right. Yeah. We don't sell commodity products. So every opportunity that we get to talk, we don't talk money right out of the gate, right? Because unless that's where the customer wants to go. And if that's where they're wanting to go, then you need to understand why is it. Yeah. Usually when we're talking to somebody, there's some companies that are very curious and proactive, and there's other companies that are a little more complacent, and they don't change until they have to, which means there's been a trigger of some sort. And then that's when people tend to spend money when there was more emotionally.
A breach of some kind?
An event of some sort. Yes, sir.
Yeah. And what are those typical breaches or events that get people's attention? Is it robbery? Is it
well, we live in a world today where there are active assailants every day. It used to be called active shooters, but now there's multiple things. It's domestic violence in corporations. Yeah. It's intellectual property theft. I mean, it could be any number of things. I have a very good client that they started on their journey because they had some overhead projectors that were stolen. and it was somebody just hanging around waiting for somebody to come out, grab the door before it closed, walked inside, grabbed what they could find, some laptops, some projectors, maybe $10,000 worth of equipment, and walked out the door with it.
Yeah.
To them, that's a breach.
And how can you tell in that first meeting whether this deal is going to progress or they're going to go with the minimum that they need to fix the urgent problem?
Yeah. It's a great question, and it's not always easy to identify, but I think if you're talking to a prospect and they are focused more on the today value versus the long-term value and the strategy behind it, they're much more willing to pay for a lesser solution.
Yeah.
And it's like with most products. I mean, if you look at the car industry, you've got ranges from economical to extravagant, right? And not everybody can afford to drive an extravagant car. Some people just need the car to go from A to B and back to A again. And they'll care about the luxury, the feeling, and all of that. So I think when we're talking about Boone Edom product to our clients, it's really about making that emotional connection and tying the value of their actions and their spend back to their culture of their company and legacy that they want to leave.
And does this responsibility typically get delegated to somebody who doesn't have economic power or even technical decision-making power, where they're kind of like gathering information, the RFI guy or girl that kind of like does a market study? And
the internet is a great thing, but it can also be a very dangerous thing because everybody feels like they can be an expert. And where we really come in and try to separate ourselves is we are experts in what we do. We do it every day. You don't, Mr. Customer. You're off doing other things, but we're part of your overall security puzzle. We're not going to solve everything, but if you put the right jigsaw puzzle together, you'll have an appropriate security plan. So yes, there's always delegation, but it also depends on where they're at in that cycle. If it's, hey, I'm kind of curious about this, let's have somebody do some research, go to a trade show, get a bunch of brochures, that kind of stuff. Okay, fine. And as they move through, it typically escalates up, but it depends on the company.
Yeah. And what's your strategy there? How do you, because they're nice people, they may answer your questions, but they're not really caring about you versus somebody else. Yeah. All they care about is, okay, does it match the minimum requirements and what's the price?
That's right. So, everybody wants to compare apples to apples. Well, even apples to apples aren't always the same, even the same type of apple, right? They're different shapes and sizes and taste and all of that. So I always try to, when I'm in front of a client, I try to ask, again, those questions, because what I never want to do is take a no from somebody who cannot say yes. If they can't say yes, then they're not allowed to give me a no. They can say no, but I'm going to keep asking questions in a respectful manner to try to get to that next level of authority. And, typically when you come in, as long as you are not, it's about me and my wants and me selling a product to you, and it's more about them and their journey, and you can do it from a consultative and an educational standpoint, they're gonna remember that. Now, that doesn't mean that it always works out 100% of the time. We do all the work and somebody else gets the spoils of the effort. But that happens, but you learn from that and you learn those triggers, and that's just something that comes with experience.
Yeah. And how did you develop this curiosity? Because that is kind of one of the things that differentiates the best from the rest, is the people who start thinking like the client.
Yep. Yeah. So, again, it goes back to some of the sales training that I've had and just really taking an inside look as to why does my phone ring? Why do I get an order? And understanding that there are certain drivers that you can really start putting pieces together, whether it's by vertical, whether it's by product type, and you really create those playbooks. And I think if you're not curious, Brian, then you're missing out on half of the fun of sales, because if you just try to go in and bang your head on the door and just sell features and benefits, it's going to be a hard day, because again, everybody has features and benefits.
Right.
But what your competition doesn't have, my competition doesn't have me. And that's where I can differentiate between the commodity, differentiate between the price, differentiate between a lot of no's, is because they don't have me. And that, and my salespeople are the same way. And that's what I try to tell them every day is, you are the difference. It's not necessarily the product, because people buy from people.
And everyone says that, but a lot of salespeople who don't get it don't understand what it means.
It's true.
Because they're people, everyone's people.
Mm-hmm.
But, and how do you differentiate yourself? I think
So I explain that to folks, saying, look, if we have something where we have a large delta between us and the competitor in price, and somebody is willing to create a global standardization on our company, on me, on the service and the support that they're given, right? It's about not leaving your customers behind. I'm never there just for a sale. I'm there for a relationship. That sale is important, but it's the long-term business that I'm interested in, because there's always a lot more that you're going to get down the line, and they're going to leave and go someplace else and take you with them. The product is important at some point, but I do believe that the salesperson is as important as the product in that process.
Because they're looking at this because currently the current situation isn't secure enough, right? There's some dissatisfaction there.
Right.
And you're probably up here, you're at the higher level. Do they understand the issues, or are they really trying to not understand the issues?
I think, Brian, for the most part, they are trying to understand the
They
issues,
are.
because look, even in corporations where you take a chief security officer, he has to take this idea and sell it up the food chain, right? He has to sell it up through the C-suite. So a lot of times we spend an exorbitant amount of time with them, helping prepare them to sell that up through, to create their own value proposition within their organization. So it's not just a matter of them saying, yeah, I think this is great. Now they've got to get the buy-in from the executive level, who really has no clue about what this is. And they have an image in their head of, oh, well, I don't want this to look institutional or like a prison. It's like, no, well, there's architectural finishes, and they're built in using architects, and they're placed properly, and they really can enhance your facility. So it's a matter of doing that. And you do that by several different means.
And do you get them focused on the cost of not doing it? Because
Of course.
yeah, that's typically a lot more expensive than.
Well, that's it, right? So as we said earlier, cost is important, and the cost of doing something, or it can be outweighed by the cost of not doing something. And what does that lead towards, right? And where we sit with it being a physical security measure, and if an evaluation, if a penetration test has been done on a facility and it's a legal document, and then they choose not to do something and something happens, it's a legal document saying you knew where your gaps were, you knew where you were vulnerable, and you chose not to do something. So there is a cost to not doing it. And, with some of our products, there is an ROI factor to it. So we have to, build that into there so that they can sell that up. It's a fixed cost versus a reoccurring cost of using armed guards, that are humans.
Or liability.
Or liabilities, that's right.
Because if an employee gets hurt or dies, you may have liability insurance.
Right.
But that doesn't help the other employees feel safe.
No, it doesn't. And it's something about brand damage, right? Things that can cause, we see a lot of it today, not because of that, but because of other factors where, corporations they'll spend a lot of money to try to change the narrative on bad publicity. Somebody once said, any publicity is good publicity. I don't agree with that. I definitely want it to be good publicity. And we have several instances and stories that are fantastic where our products have helped stop something from happening. And those are the types of stories that, They don't necessarily want to advertise that, but those are the types of stories that are good for companies to know, that there are devices in this world that can help keep your people safe.
And have you become really good at like doing a pre-meeting drive by the facility to kind of
Oh
see
yeah.
what?
Oh, look, when you talk about what separates, top performers from just salespeople, it's all about preparation and planning.
Yeah.
And, if you're not planning your day, then your day's planning you. And preparation, yeah, there's lots of times. I mean, if you're going in for a big meeting, go in early, go in a night before, drive around the facility, see if you, heck, in our case, I'll try to walk in, see not necessarily how far I can get, but just what do they already have in place. But if you don't have time to do that, a salesperson, there's a playbook. So it's the moment you pull into the parking lot, you should start gathering intel. How many parking spots are there? That tells you kind of how many people are in the building. How's their lobby decorated? Tells you what type of aesthetics they might be interested in. What's the receptionist or the guard service like? Are they inquisitive? Are they, on their phones? What does that look like? And, you should just constantly be building that case in your head so that, that's the information, that's their environment. Use their environment as part of the sales call.
And so many reps don't take that into consideration.
No, it's run, 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 run. And that's where I go back to the tortoise and the hare. Slow down. Just slow down.
Because you've brought up a lot of scenarios that I'm guessing that they're not thinking about.
I would say not all of them are thinking about that. Correct.
Yeah.
And luckily for us, I don't think a lot of our competition thinks that way.
Because I gotta believe they walk right into the commodity trap all the time.
Yeah, there's a lot of Me Too type syndrome from, we can do exactly what they do, but we can do it cheaper. Okay, well, it's one thing to say you can do what somebody else does, but it's another thing when the rubber hits the road and you really can't do it. And that you may lose a few deals on that, but over time that'll catch up to them. The experience won't be great, the response won't be great. People have asked me, why have you been with this company for 13 years? Well, I've seen this company spend way too much time and way too much of their own money to ensure that the customer has a level of satisfaction after the fact. Because there's nothing worse than buyer's remorse.
Yeah.
That'll kill future deals.
And what creative things have you done to kind of keep that engagement going? Because I got to believe after that first call, they think they've got everything, but they don't.
No. And that's sometimes I think salespeople get what's called happy ears, and they hear what they want to hear in a sales call, and they think, oh, this is great. It was a great meeting. They gave me 2 hours. But what did you accomplish in that 2 hours? Do you give them everything in the first meeting? No. You always leave something so that they have to come back. You're not going to deprive them of information just because you want to, I want them to call me back. But there's ways that you can creatively create those tension moments so that they think about it after the fact and they're like, really would like to know more about that. So, some things that I like to do is a peer-to-peer. I'll let my other customers talk to them, tell them the goods, the bads, the uglies, the pitfalls, walk them through what the situation looks like. Sometimes that's the best salespeople that you can have is your own customers.
Right, because they're not going to appreciate the differentiators for a long time. It's not going to be day one.
No, it's definitely not day one. Day one in our world, day one is like flipping the world upside down because somebody walks in. Now there's, it's like after 9/11 and you're getting on a plane and you walk up and there's all this TSA security. You're like, what in the world is this? It's the same thing with our customers when they go live. So what do we like to do? We like to be on site when they go live to answer questions. That's not something that we charge for. It's just part of the experience, part of the journey.
And how much is it of personal wins for them? Because I got to believe that's part of it, or is that not so much?
Yeah, I think there is a piece of that to it, right? So it goes back to a legacy. And when somebody's with an organization for a while and they want to leave it better than they found it, there are certain things that they can do. Um, the pandemic really made a lot of our customers look, I'm going to say smarter than they are, but I don't mean that in any offensive way. But the devices that they put into their facilities allowed them to close entrances and funnel people to one main thing without having to post guards. They've still, life safety, you could leave, but you can't come in. So in hindsight, it was like a win-win, not knowing that there was a pandemic coming around the corner and how do you navigate that. And so there were a lot of customers that looked, it was a very bright spot for them proposing and the C-suite signing off on it, because it really did save a bunch of companies a lot of money.
Yeah. And what makes a great sales rep in this space?
Yeah. Well, I think we've mentioned it a few times. It's curiosity, right?
Yeah.
It really is, but it's also having a drive that is more about their customer than it is about yourself. Look, we're all important, and we all have families to take care of and things to do, or we want to do. But if you're not in it for your customer, then it doesn't matter what you're selling. I think and to me, it doesn't matter it doesn't matter what the widget is you're selling. You can take something that could be the biggest commodity of the world and add value to it.
Well,
because it's you.
That's it. Because that the client wants to do the right thing, but they don't know what the right thing is.
That's right. Yep. And the problem is they're dealing with salespeople. I say as a sales manager, the hardest part of my job is interviewing salespeople when you're looking to hire, because what do? They sell and they know themselves the best. I mean, everybody should win an award for their capabilities, but you have to get creative when you're even doing that. And I think it goes to the sales side as well. You have to be creative to get people out of their comfort zone.
Yeah.
Whether it's an interview process or it's a selling process, if you can get them out of their comfort zone in a way that they'll open up, they'll walk you right to where you need to go.
Yeah.
If you'll just listen to them and ask the right questions.
And have you found a little trick to do that? Maybe a tour of the facility, or to kind of get them moving out of the conference room or alone, so that their opinions aren't judged by peers, or take them to a client, another client site to have them see it in action?
Yeah, I think a peer-to-peer site visit is always a good tact, right? So they get to go see a live. A lot of our equipment is not readily accessible by the general public because it's in
Secure.
data centers, it's in secure facilities, it's in this type of stuff, and people aren't just flaunting it. But there are ways to even do it at their own facility. So if they'll give you permission to say, hey, we've got this entrance, this hallway that we want to do, and they'll allow you to take pictures, you can photo more things in there to give them visual images of what it would actually look like. I think one of the greatest skill sets that a salesperson can have is when whoever you're meeting with picks you up in the lobby and they're taking you somewhere, and it's noticing their environment. Are they a call center with a bunch of cubicles? Do they have data rooms inside there? Is it open area? Is it all offices? Is it stairwells? Is it lots of exits? And just ask again those provocative questions. Don't talk about yourself. Don't talk about your product. Talk to them. Ask them questions about them. Get them talking, because what do they want to do? They want to talk about themselves too. Then you can start weaving the story around how your solutions, your products can provide the right solution in their different environments. And then you kind of relate it to, well, I have another client who's similar to this, and this is what their experience has been like after doing that. So yeah, there's tricks and things to that, but it kind of depends on the site.
And do you have the ability to kind of visualize the deal from start to finish once you start meeting and talking with people, like a chessboard?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I read something earlier today, and it's funny you say chess, about remotely leading people is like playing chess in the dark, and I can imagine that's very difficult. It's an intriguing topic, but Yes, I do think that there is some visibility that you can see how it should play out
Yeah.
now. But I think in order for that to happen, you have to be able to recognize where those potential pitfalls are and walk them through the pitfalls. Don't not necessarily avoid the pitfalls, address the pitfalls and
As
say,
soon
here's
as
what could happen if you don't do it as soon as possible. Right. So we always use the term, I want to race to the no, and that could be KNOW or NO. I want to know that this is going to be a great application for them, or I want to know that they're not going to do it because I don't want to waste my time. I don't want to waste their time. So I'm always trying to race to the no.
yeah. And on the NO part, can you kind of sense in that first call, they're not going to spend the
Yeah.
extra money for this.
Yeah, I
They're
can.
going to go lowest
Yeah,
bid.
there's some certain tells that people will give and they'll kind of tip their hand a little bit. But I don't believe it's over till it's actually over, until I get, it's kind of that definitive punch to the gut or something like that. It's like Mike Tyson always said, everybody has a plan until they get hit in the face, hit in the mouth, right? And until you get that hit, there's still a plan that you're trying to work. And you're leveraging other entities within your organization to try to figure out, okay, have we worked with them in other parts of the world? Can we show success from that standpoint? And then sometimes it's just straight up, not everybody should drive a Maserati.
Well, that's it. And it may look externally like a good match, but you get in there and it's like a bunch of new people. All they care about is money. That they're not really emphasizing security. They just want to check a box.
That's right.
And you're like, do
And
you really want to go through a whole process to find out the obvious?
no. And and sometimes the best lesson that they can learn is by doing something that doesn't work out in the long run. Those are sometimes the best way to learn. If you think about growing up, your parents can tell you what you should do, but you're like, I know better. Well, no.
Well, that's it, because the chief security office, I mean, they must get a million requests a month of
I can't imagine
products and things that they should buy to be more secure. And the physical stuff may not be as glamorous, but it's just as important, or if not more important.
It's all important. What it comes down to, Brian, is how they assimilate all of it together, whether it's a software, a forensic level of surveillance, or a physical layer of surveillance. One without the other is just one without the other.
Right.
But when you put them together in the right way, it creates a very robust program. And so, yes, they are constantly bombarded, and that's even the thing, prior to the pandemic, you went and saw people, and then pandemic, everything was email, and now everybody's flooded with emails. Well, guess what people want now? They just want a phone call. They want to talk to a live person. That's right. So pick up the phone and call. Don't just be another one of those, oh, I'm going to send you an email with features and benefits. No, let's.
Cool. Hey, I really appreciate your time today. Where can people go to connect and follow you?
So website is www.boonedam, boonedam.us. And all of our contact information is there. We have some great case studies and white papers and things like that. But if you'll just go to the website, you can find us, and any of us would be happy to reach out and help you solve your problems.